Hey everybody. So it's day 65 of 100 ways to motivate yourself. And today it's called Promise the Moon. And I think this is good. I've experienced this, so I have a little testimonial to share with you guys, but I'm just going to dive in. So Promise the Moon. So the author in this particular chapter starts out by talking about one frightening and effective way to motivate yourself is to go and make an unreasonable promise, or to go to somebody that you care about, either personally or professionally, somebody that that you have a lot of respect for, and go to them and promise them something big. Like, it could be whatever it is. I mean, the possibilities are endless. I tried coming up with so many scenarios here, and the possibilities were endless. And the bottom line here of what he's teaching us is be frightened, and in that fright is your effectiveness to go and make a big promise to somebody about something you're going to do. He gives an example, which I'm happy he did, because at first I was like, okay, what? He talks about how President John F. Kennedy had promised the nation when he got elected that he would put a man on the moon, and how that energized NASA to then be able to support it. And so he goes on to quote some man who called Kennedy's aspirations to put a man on the moon and to have promised it without really seeing how they were going to deliver it. He called it outrageous. But then he goes on to say that because it was outrageous and because he had made such a public declaration that they were going to put a man on the moon, that it showed how effective being outrageous with your promises could be. He goes on to talk about how there was this billionaire in Vegas who he owned a casino, and he wanted to quit smoking, but everything he tried to do to quit smoking, he kept failing at. So what he did was he took out a billboard ad, and he said that if you see me smoking in the next 90 days, I will pay you $100,000. And he said there was a lot of power in that promise. Can you imagine being that guy, and how much was at stake if somebody caught you smoking? So then he goes on to give another example about how many years ago he promised to send his children to this very expensive camp, this summer camp. And, it was winter when he promised them that. And as spring rolled around and summer rolled around, he, the author, lost his job. And so this very exclusive summer camp was going to be like a ton of money. And so he had to break it to his children, and he'd actually forgotten that he wasn't going to be able to send them to camp. And it was his child's soft reminder that said, but you promised, that kind of lit a fire under his tail. And he thought, gosh, you're absolutely right. I did promise, blah, blah, blah. And so he went back to doing what he had promised. That's it for the chapter, guys. So the rest is on me. So the point here is this. Okay, so I did some research on this. There's a lot of evidence that shows that when you publicly announce your goals, that it tends to have the reverse effect, that it tends to make you lose motivation. And I guess it depends on whether your heart is in it, whether it's a goal that you're doing or a promise that you're making for somebody else. It depends on who's aspiring to complete this. So, I think there's a lot of value in day 65, that if you make a big, declaration and make it publicly known, that you have to stand behind it. I also think that there's a lot of reverse psychology going on there. But the reason that this works for some people, that they make a big promise to somebody publicly, is because here's the life coaching moment. A lot of people find that they break promises to themselves, but they won't break a promise to somebody else. I don't know. Any of you guilty of that? Like, you'll say, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to lose 50 pounds this time. And then you don't do it. You don't show up for yourself. You don't keep a promise to yourself. You might even put some incentive behind it to say, oh, I'm going to lose 50 pounds. And if I do it, I get to go buy this outfit or a new car or whatever. And you still don't show up for yourself, despite the reward. But for some people, having the public humiliation is the way to go. So you have to figure out what works for you. Should you promise the moon? here's where Yoda comes into play. Yoda is the one who taught us that you do or you do not. There is no try. So when it comes to, making a promise to somebody or creating a goal for yourself, you need to assess whether or not, it's something that is really genuinely in your heart. So here are my parting life coach words for you. Whether you publicly announce something doesn't matter when it comes to your motivation. You're not going to get motivated. Some people are motivated by things publicly, some people are not. Sure, you might complete it and hold resentment, or you might quit and still hold resentment. The bigger thing, in my humble opinion, is to love yourself enough to make a promise and to keep it for yourself. Okay? You don't have to do anything for anybody, but at the same time, you need to make sure that you're in a position where you have enough self-respect to do things for yourself and to be committed to things for yourself. But here's the thing. The more outrageous the promise, the more amazing the reward, you guys. And realize that whether or not you share your goal publicly doesn't really matter, but that you matter enough, whether you have something that you want to do and it's public or private. You're important enough to be the person to whom you keep your own promise. So a way that this has worked for me in my life, and this is kind of all over the place because I really didn't find a lot of motivation from this chapter, but I promised to Landon the other day, actually it was like 2 weeks ago, that after we dropped the girls off at school, that when we came home, we were going to go lift weights and we were going to go to the treadmill, because if I go downstairs and work out in the gym, that means he's not scared to sit down there and play with his trains. So we got home and I found every excuse in the book to not go to the gym. And so he quickly reminded me of the fact that, so here's my moral of the story. When in doubt, if there's a goal you want to achieve, hire a 5-year-old, because they are unrelenting. And here's something else in terms of reverse psychology. I set out to do these 100 days. And you know what? It's something that was in my heart to do. I don't even know why. It was impressed upon me from God or something, and it just resonated with me. But I knew that by saying I'm going to go live for the next 100 days and doing this, that it would teach me things and it would help me to grow. And you know what, you guys, it totally has. Because, and it hasn't, I haven't harbored any resentment. I don't resent you guys every time I'm like, oh, I didn't go live, or, oh, it's late, or, oh, my hair, and, I just put a ball cap on and I stuck it up and I do it. And the reward has been amazing, because what I have learned is something I could not have paid anybody for. Because every day that I show up for myself, every day that I show up, I'm showing up for myself. Every day that I show up, I'm showing up because there might be one person that I'm the only positive voice they hear. Every day that I show up, I'm one step closer to becoming a public speaker. And every day that I show up, I'm showing my kids what a commitment looks like. So I guess the moral of the story is this. If you want to be motivated, know that you are important enough to matter enough to be the person to whom you keep your promises. You can make it publicly known if that helps you, or you can just keep it to yourself. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to having enough self-respect to show up and keep your obligations, even when you're the only person to whom you're keeping that obligation. There you go. I will see you guys on day 66. I can't even believe it. 66. Wow. All right, guys. Have a good evening. Bye.